Ever wonder how an experience that only lasts a few hours can end up changing someone's life for good? Well, today we're diving into some fascinating science that looks at exactly that, the link between psychedelics and the brain's incredible ability to literally rewire itself. I mean, this is the central puzzle, right? We know these experiences can have these profound, lasting effects on how people see the world long after the substance is gone from their system. But how? What's actually happening in the brain that allows for such a durable change from such a brief event? For a long time, the focus has really been on the psychological side of things, the subjective experience. And don't get me wrong, that is hugely important. But it turns out it's not the whole story. It's not even close. That's right. The answer is biological. The science is telling us that these changes are actually rooted in the physical structure and function of the brain itself. And the key to this whole thing is a powerful process called neuroplasticity. So, what even is neuroplasticity? Let's break down what it means for your brain to physically change, because it's a pretty wild concept. Okay, so at its core, neuroplasticity is just the brain's ability to remodel itself. A good way to think about it is like a city. Over time, a city can build new roads, it can tear down old ones, change the flow of traffic to make things run better. Your brain is doing something very, very similar with its connections all the time. And this remodeling, it happens at different scales. You've got the molecular level. We're talking about the tiny chemical signals zipping around inside your brain cells. And then you've got the cellular level, which is the bigger picture, the actual growth of new branches on your neurons and forming new connections. We can basically split plasticity into two main types. On one side, you have structural plasticity. That's the actual construction work, literally growing new branches on your neurons. Then, on the other side, you have functional plasticity. That's more about upgrading the roads you already have, making the communication between neurons stronger or weaker, just more efficient. And what's so interesting is that the research suggests psychedelics get involved in both. This all sounds incredible, but it really begs the question, right? How? How exactly do these substances kick this whole remodeling process into high gear? What's the trigger? So it really boils down to this three-step process. First, the psychedelic molecule acts like a key, and it fits into a very specific lock on the surface of a neuron. That's the serotonin 2A receptor. When that key turns, it unlocks this whole chain reaction inside the cell, a cascade of chemical signals. And those signals are basically a direct message to the neuron's headquarters, the nucleus, telling it, hey, start making the proteins we need for growth. Now, I know what you're thinking. This diagram looks incredibly complicated. And well, it is. But you don't need to be a neuroscientist to get the big idea here. Just notice how that molecule at the top kicks off all these interconnected pathways. This just goes to show that those simple steps we talked about are part of a really well-researched, intricate biological machine. And it's all designed to lead to one thing: plasticity. And one of the most important proteins that gets made in this whole process is called BDNF. Honestly, the easiest way to think about BDNF is like miracle grow for your neurons. It is literally a fertilizer that encourages the growth of new branches and new connections. It's what boosts the brain's ability to learn, adapt, and change. Okay, so that's the theory, and it's a pretty cool theory. But what's the actual evidence? Let's take a look at the hard findings from the scientific review we're exploring today. The review pulled together the results from 20 different studies. 16 of them were preclinical, lab-based studies, and 4 of them were clinical studies with human participants. So that gives us a pretty solid foundation of evidence to look at. So the research they analyzed really falls into two camps. On the left, you've got the preclinical work, studies in petri dishes, on animal models, that let scientists look directly at the cells. Then on the right, you have the clinical work with people, where you can't look at the cells directly, but you can look for key markers of plasticity in things like their blood. And what did they find? Well, this is the really cool part. The results were incredibly consistent. In those lab studies, scientists could literally see rapid physical changes. After just one dose, neurons in rats were growing more complex branches, more connection points. And in the human studies, they found the next best thing: increased levels of plasticity markers, like that miracle grow protein, BDNF, circulating in the blood of volunteers just hours after a dose. The authors of the review really summed it up perfectly. They said the evidence clearly shows that these substances trigger these biological adaptations related to neuroplasticity. And here's the kicker. They suggest these physical changes could be the very foundation, the underlying reason for the therapeutic effects people report. So let's zoom out for a second. We've gone from the microscopic world of molecules all the way to the lab evidence. What does all of this actually mean for mental health?
This is really the core therapeutic idea. Think about conditions like depression or anxiety. They're often described as the brain being stuck in these rigid negative loops of thinking. So by promoting neuroplasticity, by literally fertilizing the brain and encouraging new connections, these substances might create a window of opportunity to break free from those old patterns and form new, healthier ones. It's about helping the brain get itself unstuck.
And that really leaves us with this pretty profound final thought. Instead of just treating symptoms, this line of research points to a future where we might be able to address the root biological causes of mental illness simply by harnessing the brain's own built-in capacity to change and to heal. It's a fascinating prospect, and one that science is really just starting to figure out. Makes you wonder what the future of mental health care is going to look like, doesn't it?